Well, look, again, it comes down to that intersection between these different factions. You have the European side of these negotiations, and then, of course, you have the parliamentary side of these negotiations. And that chicken and egg situation, we're seeing it play out in these last few minutes with this statement from the Democratic Unionist Party. They say, we've been involved in ongoing discussions with the government. We know, for instance, that they've been in for the last 3 nights to number 10 Downing Street to talk to the Prime Minister. As things stand, we could not support what's being suggested on customs consent issues, and there's a lack of clarity on VAT. And that's partly because, of course, these talks have been so last minute. And you've got these teams of negotiators and lawyers involved in drafting legal texts, sometimes hundreds of pages long, very, very complex issues. And, of course, that doesn't tend to happen as overnight as perhaps the Prime Minister may have wanted. We'll continue to work with the government to try and get a sensible deal that works for Northern Ireland and protects the economic and constitutional integrity of the United Kingdom. Again, a reference to that all-island economy that's been so helpful both for the Republic and Northern Ireland since the Good Friday Agreement was signed more than 20 years ago. Constitutional integrity. This is all about the law versus the reality again when it comes to a customs union. Remember, not that long ago, nearly 2 years ago though, Theresa May was here in Brussels, meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker, trying to find a way through on Brexit, and it was a call from the DUP leader, Arlene Foster, that scuppered those efforts at the very last minute. It seems like, once again, they are the spanner in the works for the British government, and the challenge for Boris Johnson is, A, will the European leaders now be willing to make a deal with him this week, given that it doesn't necessarily mean he has the parliamentary numbers, and if he doesn't get a deal this week, what does that mean to him when he goes back to Parliament for this sitting on Saturday? It may mean he's forced to ask for an extension, something that, of course, he very clearly has said again and again he doesn't want to seek.
How about this concept of not leaning on votes from the right of his party and from the DUP, which would be a tortuous path for any Prime Minister, and leaning on votes from the centre and saying, OK, Mr Corbyn, you want a confirmatory referendum on this. This is my deal. If you back my deal, I'll give you your confirmatory referendum. I know we're going into various hypotheses now, but if he can't rely on votes from the right, can he get those votes somewhere from the centre? I know it's a dangerous political game, but we know the ultimate goal for Boris Johnson is to win a general election. Can he win a second referendum if he goes down that route? That's another question.
Well, this is what Owen Smith, member of the Labour Party we talked to yesterday in Westminster, was talking about, this idea that on Saturday, one way that he might be prepared, or individuals in his party, the Labour Party, might be prepared to back this deal, is if they can attach the concept of a second referendum to confirm that the country is happy with this deal. The challenge there, again, from Boris Johnson politically, who said he'd rather be dead in a ditch than extend beyond October 31st, is that would force him to extend the Brexit deadline. It would also rely, of course, on the Europeans saying, have more time, have that referendum. And because we're so close to October 31st, the time for all of those moving parts to align, very, very short.
Willem, let me just ask you about the timeline then for today, because we're meant to be waiting for this deal to come before some sort of lunchtime session at the European summit that Michel Barnier has been trying to coordinate. At the same time, the Prime Minister's office is meant to be tabling this motion about Parliament sitting on Saturday. So now we've had this message from the DUP. Where does it leave those two various factors?
So today in Brussels, what the European Council has published as an agenda and a timetable is that at around lunchtime, 1 o'clock here, European leaders will start to arrive. They would then, in theory, be getting a briefing, an update, an argument, a pitch from Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, and then he would essentially be asked to leave the room, as often happened with his predecessor Theresa May, and the 27 remaining leaders of the European Union would sit there and talk and discuss what he has just suggested. That then, in theory, would wrap up as a discussion by late afternoon, and then they can get on with all the other issues they'd like to talk about, which of course will include later this week discussions of the future EU budget, something very dear to their hearts. Clearly, the imposition of US tariffs on European goods, another political football that they have to try and handle at the moment. And if they can get Brexit out of the way by later on this afternoon, as was the plan, that would be preferable. Now that the DUP have come out with this statement, now it looks far more less likely, I should say, that the Prime Minister can get this deal through Parliament. There may be questions amongst some of those European leaders as to whether this is a good use of their time at this summit.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.